Welcome again, Eilen and Jewell, to What's My Scene, and thank you for meeting with me. And I know you're in Idaho, and it's a much more civilized hour than it is for me right now. It's 8:30 in the morning for me, I think. And yeah, as we were just talking before, the future's looking pretty good. The future's warm.
Oh, good. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, that is very good. Now, last time I saw you was in 2018 at the Caravan Club in Melbourne. And you had, probably a year before, released Downhearted Blues.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, it seems like 5 minutes and 50 years has passed. It's really weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like times of COVID are like, oh, they dragged on forever, but then they went in a flash when things are sort of getting back to business as usual. So how have you, like, you were so close to coming back, you just missed it. They just closed the curtain on letting people in, and it's one of those things. But now we're going to have you back in March, which is awesome. And you've got a new record, Gypsy.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about the new record.
Well, it was actually released at the end of 2019. So as you can imagine, we didn't really have a chance to tour behind it very much at all. And yeah, we were just about to leave for Australia. We had like 1 foot out the door when it was actually the woman that we hired to be our road nanny who told us, you guys, you don't know what you're doing. You're crazy to even think about going to Australia, because she lived in New York and we lived in Idaho, and we just took, Idaho is its own thing. It's like separated from New York by thousands of miles and huge culture gap. And I mean, New York was the epicenter of the pandemic for a little while there. And so she was like, no, you don't understand. Like, people are not leaving their houses here. I'm not going to Australia and you shouldn't either. And so we listened to her, and that was the first time we'd ever canceled anything. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done because I wanted to go so bad. But it ended up being, I think, the right call, because I think like the day after we canceled the tour, they said, no one can enter or leave the country. So I don't know where we would have been if we had if we had actually tried to go. That's how close it was to the beginning of the pandemic. And so since then, we've actually scheduled this tour. I think this might be the 4th or 5th time we've rescheduled it. So fingers crossed that this is the one. I get a good feeling about it. 5th time.
Me too. Persistence pays off.
Yeah. And since then, so Gypsy is the latest one that we've released, but we're about to release another new album. So it's almost like we'll have 2 new albums when we show up in Australia. That one's going to be released in May. So lots of new material, but we'll also play a lot of old material too.
Well, you've got, is it 7 or 8 records now?
Yeah, I think this one, the newest one, will be the 9th like studio album, and then there's a live one too. Yeah,
that's awesome. And I know that the album that we were just talking about that you were touring in 2018 in Australia, Downhearted Blues, that was an album of covers, wasn't it?
Yeah, all blues covers.
Yeah, and I remember the story that you told about stumbling into the attic and finding all the records that belonged to your dad. So you travel, you were mentioning that you travel as a family, obviously, with little Mavis, who's now how old now?
She's 8 now, so she's over it. She doesn't want to tour with us anymore.
Well, I was just going to say, if she was teenage Mavis, if she stumbled into the attic and found your records, what would she find?
That's a good question. I guess the same records that my dad hid away. Lots of Howlin' Wolf and Mississippi John Hurt and early Bob Dylan. And Yeah. And, I try to expose her to a lot of that stuff, because I think it's the best. And she doesn't hate it. So, there's some hope for the next generation.
Well, that's a big plus, I reckon, in your favor. That's parenting done right, as they say.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So, how do you find we're getting back into travel now? Is this the first big trip that you're going to be doing since post-pandemic?
We actually went to Europe last August, September. Um, and that was pretty major. And Mavis stayed home for that, which was sad. Yeah, it's like the new hardship is missing her. It was really difficult to tour with her because, she was so young and so like everything was hands on. And now it's like, oh, then the
Yeah.
new difficulty is leaving her, not touring with her. So yeah, it's really hard to strike that balance as a parent and a touring musician. It's like, you just can't win. But
No, well, there's always a bit of give and take there, isn't there?
mhm, definitely. And she's excited to stay with some friends this time, so maybe it's a bit of a silver lining. And yeah, maybe she'll come with us next time. But yeah, we did Europe last year, and then we did a pretty major tour of the United States too. And
Oh,
she got to come with us for that. But yeah, lots of shows last year.
yeah. And so obviously that was on the back of Gypsy. And um, I'm excited now to know that there's a new record coming out and that we'll be hearing some new material when you come. So obviously you're coming with the full band.
Yeah, we have Jerry Miller still. He's always been with me, and Jason Beek on drums. And we have a new bass player though since last time. His name's Matt Murphy on
Oh,
upright bass. And he's never been to Australia, so he's looking forward to seeing it for the first time.
oh, that's awesome. And you're doing quite a few shows this time. So you'll be
Mhm.
doing a few shows in Melbourne and regional Victoria and Port Fairy Folk Festival, of course, and
Yeah.
all around the rest of the country.
Mhm.
Um, do you have a favourite venue in Australia?
Boy, I don't know if I have a favorite venue because it changes so much, but I will say that Australia in general, but I think Melbourne we tend to do slightly better, like more people come to see us in Melbourne. It's always on the top of my list as when people ask me, what are your favorite places to play? And it's not just because I like to see them go, ooh, Australia, how
No, no.
exciting and exotic, which I always get that reaction from people about. But it's really just like I feel like Australians have this great sensibility about music. It seems important to the culture, and they take it seriously, but not in like a way that's not fun. It's like a fun
Yeah.
kind of taking seriously. And they, I just think that Australians tend to be very friendly, and yeah, we've never like had a interaction with an Australian that has not been either neutral or positive.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've had a pretty good affinity with Australia and especially Melbourne. Like Melbourne radio, I know I first heard of you on 3RRR
Oh
on
yeah.
on the Twang show, and I think just that culture of music in Melbourne in particular is very supportive of independent artists,
Mhm.
and that's why, you know, I think people like coming back all the time because there's always a fresh new audience or old favorite people that you can come back and it's like, you know, you're visiting friends again.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a nice thing. Now, the other story that I remember in particular from that gig that I saw you at last time was about the library, about getting rejected from the library. Now, I wanted to ask you that for anyone that didn't hear that story or doesn't know that story, you were rejected from the library because you didn't have an address. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
that's
you
right.
weren't homeless.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, what's the definition of homeless? And yeah, I thought I was so outraged. Like, what does having an address have to do with wanting to read a book? And I mean, looking back on it, I see it's like, well, they want to be able to track you down in case you don't return the book. Okay. But yeah, it was a book about the Carter family, the first country, or the first family of country music. And I just, I, I thought that I should be allowed to read it even without an address. So it was news to me. And yeah, I guess it really kind of caused it to hit home how like the lifestyle that I was living back then, where I was just like kind of in my car, like playing music around, just sort of floating around the country, was it's just not how the modern world is set up. So I was kind of going against the grain, and it was really uncomfortable at times. Although I had a lot of freedom in it, there was a lot of joy and freedom in not having to pay rent or like worry about kind of mundane things. There were other mundane things that would pop up that just caused me to feel like, hey, wait a second, I'm trying to be a bohemian here. And you want me to have like a card and stuff and like, yeah, address. It's not fair, man.
It's funny, isn't it? But I think it's actually changing now because so many people are living in RVs and just being nomads, and especially
Yeah.
older people that have had all that before, but now they're like, oh, I just want to get in my van and go. And especially, post pandemic and during the pandemic, they got a bit of that little taste of freedom. So it'll be interesting to see how things change as society is more accepting of that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, that might end up happening. And in which case
Yeah.
maybe I'll go back to it.
Yeah. You'll have to get a pretty big van, I think,
Yeah.
to accommodate all your records, if nothing else.
Right, yeah.
So tell us about the new record. When did you record it and where?
I recorded it in the Boise area where I live, and at actually the same studio where I've recorded the past several albums. And it was last June. And yeah, we're going to release it in May, but I think it looks like I'll have copies of it when I come down to Australia. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. What's going to be called?
It's called Get Behind the Wheel.
Oh, nice one. Oh, I see that fits into your van life.
Totally.
Get behind the wheel. Well, there's always a lot of driving in Australia, so
Yeah.
that's the downside. People think, oh, how do you cope touring in Australia with all those long drives? But hopefully you'll get a few flights in there as well.
Yeah, we fly. The first couple times we came, we drove ourselves around, and everyone thought we were nuts because they were like, "You're gonna drive from here to there, but there's like nothing in between." And we were like, "That sounds great," but we didn't realize they meant like literally nothing. There's no
No.
gas station. You don't. Yeah, we really did not know what we were getting ourselves into, but we lived to tell.
That's hilarious, but that's awesome. And so what are you looking forward to coming up in this tour? What's the most thing you're looking forward to coming back to Australia?
Let's see. I think it's the energy of Australian audiences. I've really been missing that. Yeah, just that Australian vibe.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing some old friends too, like people we haven't seen since 2018. And gosh, that's 5 years already.
I know. It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
so crazy. It's like I was saying, it's like 5 minutes, but 50 years. It's like
Mhm.
it's been it's so weird like that. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about is if you had to if you had to be a cover band for the rest of your life,
Mhm.
what artist would you pick?
Mm, probably either Loretta Lynn or Bob Dylan, because, well, Bob Dylan has so many albums that I would just never run out of new material, I think. I think I read that he's done like 40. It's astounding. And then Loretta Lynn, yeah, I think it's a tie because her material is just so fun. I love singing that stuff.
Yeah, and that album of Loretta Lynn songs that you did was amazing. And was that one of those artists that you just always loved? Or did you discover her later or early? Or what was the point when you decided that she was the one that you wanted to do the album of songs?
I discovered her kind of later. I'd heard about her, but I'm not sure why I had never bothered to check her out. I was really into Hank Williams,
Hmm.
classic country, and yeah, I don't know. It was just a blind spot for me until I was in my mid-20s, I think, and one of her songs came on the coffee shop where I was working. It was Honky Tonk Girl, I remember. And I was like, who is this? Where has she been all my life? It was love at first listen. And then I started working her songs into my band, and I had been, we had like a regular, like a residency at a local Irish pub. I started working in some Loretta songs, and then um, just more, more and more discovering her material and listening to her stuff while we were on tour, like long stretches in the van, just memorizing the words and listening over and over again. Probably driving my band crazy, but yeah, and then it just sort of evolved into a Loretta Lynn cover band, which we called Butcher Holler, and then the head of my label, which is called Signature Sounds, he heard us perform as Butcher Holler, the cover band, and was like, "You got to make a record. I'll put it out for you." And we're like, "Okay." So that's how that came about, and I think we're gonna be doing quite a few Loretta songs on this tour because, as an homage and a farewell to her.
Yeah. And that's awesome because, you were able to make that record, and did she hear it? Do you know if she heard it?
I don't think she might have heard it. We gave it to her manager when the night that we opened for her back in 2007. The reason that we got to meet her was because her manager caught wind of the fact that we had a Loretta Lynn side project called Butcher Holler, and he thought the name was so funny. He was like, "It's called Butcher Holler." I'm like, "Yeah, that's her little hometown in Kentucky." So he told her about it. She was like, "Well, I have to meet them." And it was really wonderful to get to meet her. But yeah, I never really got confirmation whether she heard it or not. I'll say that
But
she did and she loved it. That makes it
yeah,
better.
I think so. And I also think that it's awesome that you got to meet her and that it came about organically rather than you going, "Oh, we've got to get on the bill, we've got to get on the bill." It was like, they came to you because obviously what you were doing was a real from the heart thing, not just oh, let's just cash in on this Loretta Lynn business.
It was definitely from the heart. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And look, you are one of those people can that has a gift for interpreting songs, I think,
Oh, thanks.
and being able to take a cover song and make it still sound like your own song as well. And I think there's a skill in that, and it's also that folk tradition, isn't it,
Yeah, definitely.
of passing on the song,
Hmm.
and it changes and it grows and it takes on its own form, but essentially it's still the song, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I really enjoy your original music, of course, but I also love the way you can make a cover come to life in a different way.
Hmm. Well, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's something that it's not, I guess it's harder than it seems, to do a cover song. And there's a lot of different ideas out there about how best to go about it. And some people say you should be really faithful to the original, and some say, what's the point of being really faithful to the original? The original's already been done. And I'm somewhere in the middle. I like some songs I like to do very faithfully, and others less faithfully. It's just, yeah, it depends on my relationship to the song, I guess. So yeah, thanks. That's high praise.
Ah, no worries. Well, that's a good answer, because I think essentially as a musician and as a listener, you automatically have that balance of um, obviously being a music fan and enthusiast and lifelong listener. Some songs intrinsically that you can't change.
Mm-hmm.
And some songs you just make it, they become part of you, and then that comes out in a different way. So I think
Mm-hmm.
you really summed it up there very
Yeah.
well. So yeah, well, it's very exciting, and I can't wait to hear the new material. I think there'll be a lot of people along those lines. I mean, it's always a bit scary playing new stuff, I bet.
Yeah, it is. It's yeah. But I think mostly I'm just excited to be moving forward again after kind of being, having to be still and at risk of stagnating for a bit there, to be, yeah, moving ahead feels good.
Absolutely. And I was going to ask you also, on the touring front, how is it touring with a double bass, with an upright bass?
It's tricky, but he has a folding bass, a Chadwick, that there's a guy with the last name of Chadwick in Nashville who makes them so that the neck can fold into the body. So they're much easier to travel with that way. And I think they sound really good. Matt always sounds great, gets a really great sound out of it. So once we got into the folding bass, our lives were much improved on the road.
I was going to say, that's awesome. I wish I had a thought of that invention.
Yeah, yeah, really.
That's really good. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us, Eilen. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to the shows. I'm so glad that they're finally going to happen, and that not only have you got the record that you were going to be touring, you've got another one as well. So that's like a bonus as well. So
Yeah.
that's really awesome. And yeah, I don't think you'll need to pack too many winter clothes by that
Oh,
time.
good. I'm done with them.
Yeah, I bet. Has it been snowing much where you are?
A little bit. It's, yeah, starting to warm up a little now, but yeah, there was some snow earlier. Got a couple good storms.
Okay, well, I'm glad it's you and not me. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I'm just glad to take a break from it soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, anything else you wanted to add, or?
No, just looking forward to seeing you in just a few weeks.
Oh, awesome. Well, thanks so much for talking to us, and
Yeah.
yeah, have a great trip and enjoy the rest of your time at home before you have to hit the road and do that big flight. But it'll be worth it.
Yeah, it always is.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you later. I'll see you at the shows.
Yay.
All
Awesome.
right. See you.
See you.
Bye.